Hello and welcome back to Blindside Fresno. We're going to continue our conversation with Debbie Flowers and Sarah Harris, who are both mothers and raise their children while dealing with vision loss. So before we left, we heard a little bit about Debbie's going back to school and the challenges that represented. And Sarah was then going to share with us about her experiences being a domestic goddess while raising Carson. Well, she still is.
And there were a lot of things that were very difficult at first, I would say, mainly because my husband worked a lot.
Okay.
And so it was me and her, and so we had to just keep ourselves very busy. And transportation, of course, was, non-existent in a sense, because she was little. But then when she was 8, we decided we were going to start using paratransit. I had done it a little bit by myself, but I decided she was big enough, and the first thing we did was we're going to go to the library. It started with we're going to use it for the library and do dance class, and then it turned into the grocery store, and then it turned into the mall, and we drove my husband insane.
Because you were never home?
Because, we were never home, and plus he was terrified because we're running around town, and I'm blind, and I'm with my 8-year-old. Okay. And, together we crossed big streets. There's a whole lot of things that we can do that people are like, oh, but I wouldn't go, like we go downtown, we'll go for art hop things, but I wouldn't go downtown and I can see, and it's like, well, what's the big deal? I think one of the biggest things of, being at home with your child all day long is you tend to clean and clean and clean, but as your child gets bigger and they like to leave their things everywhere, you tend to decide that they need to be big enough to pick them up.
Okay.
Which
is a normal thing children should learn how to do.
It's a normal thing that children should learn how to do anyway. But when you can't see, you're like, why did you leave this right here in front of me so I can trip over it? Okay. Those kind of things. But yeah, basically, it's not much different than any other stay-at-home mom. It's just we have to be creative.
Well, I was thinking of the word that I came to mind for both of you is that you had to be very brave. I mean, because some of that stuff would be scary, and it was scary for your husbands to let you just go. And I know when my husband, who's blind, leaves, I often am fearful. I'm like, well, let me know when you get there. Let me know when you're back, because I'm worried something's going to happen. So there's a lot of bravery involved with not being able to see well, or the people who love you, right? I think.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think, for me personally, I don't think about it as far as being bravery.
I don't either.
My husband does worry a lot, I know that, but I don't know, if I try something new, I'm nervous about it, of course, but then I just do it and then it's fine, most of the time.
So it's more getting over the trying it the first time.
Yeah.
And then,
oh, yeah.
For me it is, yeah.
And so do you think that has been a positive example for your children? That
yes.
Maybe some people
I do.
Don't show that kind of...
I do, because...
I call it bravery, but you're calling it just living. But
Yeah.
I think the fact that I went to school and I became a teacher and did what I needed to do to get there was a good example for them, and showed them no matter what, you can do it. You just have to struggle through and you'll make it.
And all of your kids are hard workers.
They are, yeah. They're all successful. My oldest is, he's up for foreman, I think in December, for a roofing company. And he's actually a project, I think he's a project manager. I'm not sure exactly what they call his position now, but, and then my daughter is an accountant, and my son is a machinist, and he's also an underwater welder. So they have had challenges as well, being sighted, so right. I don't think there's much difference. You just do it a different way.
But it's probably a lot harder to be your child and say, oh, it's too hard, I can't do it. And you're probably like,
work.
Hello, that doesn't cut it with me.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be difficult, right?
Yep.
And we know Carson from the CCB and stuff, and she's definitely a go-getter, and she's out there and doing all kinds of stuff.
Fun things.
So do you
yes.
think that was something you influenced, is just by saying, well, let's try it and let's do it together? And
Well, I think overall, the funniest thing is because she's a dancer, and
Right.
you know, from what I hear, she's a beautiful dancer. It's really funny because we're like, well, how come you didn't make her become a musician? And I'm like, why would I make my child do anything?
Right.
Overall, I've really just encouraged her to do whatever she wants to try.
Right.
You know, as she got older, I'm like, okay, now we need to pick kind of like one thing, because we were all over the place. But no, she's been a cheerleader, she's done cross country, and then of course dance, and now she's doing primarily ballet.
Okay.
And she just got a role in the Nutcracker.
Yes.
You know,
Very
so
good. That
but
would be exciting.
yeah, but it's just really funny because I just kind of follow her around, but then vice versa, she follows me to all of my various activities as well. So, you know, we're like a dynamic duo or something.
Okay. So do you think, now Debbie, your children are older, so maybe, I don't know, and with Carson being 12, you're going to be facing this. Was it harder or easier to kind of let them become their own people and go away from you, because that's what children are supposed to do with their
Yeah.
parents, right? Is you're supposed to let them go off
Well,
on their own.
I always worried about them when they weren't at home, but I had to let them go, and I knew that because I knew that they had to be independent. My mom let me go, and I was visually impaired, and I knew that I couldn't hold on to mine,
Yeah.
you know, especially being sighted. So they went on and did their own thing, and they turned out pretty good.
Yeah.
So
And so that's something that you're probably going to be facing in the next 5 or 6 years for sure.
Yep.
You know,
And how do you feel about that?
you know, honestly, I feel okay about it. Carson's the kind of kid that is basically we could throw her out the door,
And she'd survive.
And she would survive. And she would just need a job.
Yeah.
You know, she would be okay. So I don't worry too much about that. I feel bad sometimes because, you know, of course, with using paratransit to get from point A to point B, I'm stuck there with her. You know, where a lot of other parents, they'll drop off their kid and then come back later, and I'm just
Okay.
there. And so I always kind of tell her, just, you know, kind of put me over here, and you know, I keep myself busy. You know, I have paperwork and things to get done on my laptop, but I still feel bad because I don't want to be like the, you know, helicopter mom,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
right around her. So it is kind of cool when my husband's off of work and he can go and take her and drop her off and
Okay.
pick her up later, you know.
And then that gives you some time on your own as well.
Quiet time.
Yeah.
Ah.
Because, yeah, children can be noisy.
we had the advantage of raising our kids in a small town, so there were a lot of things they could just walk to.
Oh, how
Okay.
cool.
So I didn't have to be there every second. I was there a lot.
Yeah.
My daughter was in a baton twirling group,
Okay.
so of course I went to all of that, and
Mm-hmm.
and the kids all played sports. The two youngest ones played different sports every season, and my oldest was a baseball fan, so he played baseball. And of course we went to their games, but we didn't have to go to sit there during practice every day
Because you could walk.
because they could walk.
Ah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So both of you have been talking about the activities and things that they do. And I have heard people make a comment, so I'm just going to say it, and I'm sure you've probably heard it too. It's like, oh, I would hate to be blind and not be able to see my child. That would just be the most horrible thing ever. And what is your response to that when people, if they say that to you, or they just feel pity for you, or, you know what I'm saying? What is your response to that? Because nobody likes to be pitied, I don't think.
I don't like to be pitied at all.
No.
And
I know this about you, Debbie.
Yeah, you do.
I do know this about you, yes.
I was able to see all three of my children when they were born,
Okay.
and my two older ones when they were a little older. But then after my last one was born, my sight started going pretty rapidly. So,
Okay.
but yeah, I've heard that lots of times. Oh,
Well, you probably get it
know.
now more with your grandchildren because you go to a lot
Yeah,
of their functions.
yes, I
and
do.
you haven't been able to see them.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it probably.
But you just deal with it. It's just life, and we can't change it. So why worry about it? You know.
Okay.
And the kids are getting to the point that they understand. In fact, my granddaughter is 5, and she told the oldest one, who is 8, the other day that her mom needed a new mom because her mom was blind.
Mm.
So I asked her, my granddaughter says, she calls me honey. She said, honey, Allie said something mean about you this morning, and she told me what she said. And I said, oh, so does that mean No, at first I said, does that mean that I'm a bad mom because I'm blind? And she said, well, no, but she needs a stepmom.
Oh.
Oh.
And I said, so what about me being your grandma? Do you need a new grandma because I can't see? And she said, no, you can still be my grandma.
Oh, well, that's very kind of her.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh
So.
my.
So it's funny how there were. Have you experienced that where people have said stuff like that to you, or you felt like they're pitting you because of that, or how do you deal with that? Because it's probably something you wish you could see her dance and you can't. So how
Yeah.
does that work?
You know, it's really interesting because, you know, sometimes, you know, nobody will say anything to me at all. And then, but when she's performed, I've had people come up to me and just go, she's so lovely. It's a shame you can't see her.
Yeah.
And, you know, and you kind of have that kind of gut wrench for
Yeah.
a minute. I remember when she was, oh gosh, I think she was 5. And she was in Midsummer Night's Dream at Veterans Memorial. And it was like she was little, so she was there one night, you know, but it's sitting there. And, you know, and Josh leans over and he says, she's on stage now. And it's like, I don't know what she's doing. I can't see her. But at that moment, and I just cried. But I think that's like a normal reaction, like
Yeah.
for parents. But it was just so strange. And, you know, and I'm the one that sits in the front row center, like at everything. You know, it's like I can't see her, but I'm close. I'm here,
That's
honey.
right.
No,
That's
she
right.
knows
You
you're
Yep.
there.
know, yeah. And it is funny because there's been times where I always think like, oh, maybe if she had someone different, like, you know, that could see, and, you know, it would be different. And she's like, oh no, Mom, but I like you. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know, and but it is funky because, you know, you do wonder sometimes what people are thinking in their head.
Right.
You know, like, oh, you know, I know there was a lady at the grocery store one time that Carson likes to do things her way. We all know that.
Okay.
So she unloads the cart, you know, we shop together and she unloads the cart and she was doing this. And this lady says, well, you know, do you want some help? And Carson says, no, I'm fine. You know, I have this. I do things a certain way. And it was like, you could hear in this lady's voice, like just the sheer pity of the poor little girl with her blind mom standing there not doing a dang thing, you know. And Carson's like, I just don't get it. And she's like, I just want to do it my way. Has nothing to do with you being blind. She's like, we'll just step on each other's toes and it won't be fun.
Right.
You know, let's keep things kosher. But we have experienced that many times where people just kind of stop and are like, oh, but this poor kid, her mom can't see her. You know, it's like,
Oh, yeah, I've experienced that too.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just,
And it's, on one level, it's true,
Mhm.
right? But at the same time, like you said, Debbie, what can you do about it? I mean, you could fall apart, I guess, or I don't know, I'm
just
sure.
move on, yeah.
Yeah, I don't
You
know
just have
what-
to live your life,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
And you can hear them and people can tell you and that kind of thing, I guess. And then I was thinking when you were saying that at least you were there, and there's so many sighted parents who are just, they're too busy, right? They're working, they're doing this, and they don't show up.
It's
So that would be something to pity, from my point of view, even more
Yeah,
than you being there but not being able to see them.
I agree with that.
Because, you know, with you having a middle schooler and I teach and you teach, you see lots of children whose parents are just, you know, as a play on words, nowhere to be seen, right?
Yeah, exactly, yes.
So it's kind of an interesting that they pity you, right? But in a way, sometimes you could probably pity them that they wouldn't get it.
Right.
I don't think.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Now you said your grandchild made a comment. Has your kids ever said, gosh, I wish you could see me, or I wish you...
They've said throughout their lives that they wish I could see. Not necessarily them in particular, but just in general.
But not like in a necessarily like a negative way.
No,
like
never
just
in a negative
yeah,
way,
like
no,
just more of, and that's the same thing with Carson.
Okay.
You know, like, and then there's moments of this would just be so much easier if you could see right now, you know.
Right.
And you just have to kind of, you know, smile and move on. You know, because I think in general, I mean, blindness is just super annoying. Yeah.
It can be.
Yeah, it's just that it's just
Yeah.
super annoying. It's like, oh, at this moment, if I really knew, you know, what this was in my hand, it would be
Right.
okay.
Yep.
You know?
Because sometimes there's not someone around to ask.
Yeah, yeah.
And now even with technology, it's helpful.
but it doesn't
but it
always
doesn't
work.
always work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So as long as it works, you're doing Wow.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the thing that you find most difficult about being blind, and you said mostly it was just annoying. And what do you mean by that? Both of you agreed that that was true. So what do you mean by that?
Well, for example, if you lose a button on a shirt and you try to sew it back on and you poke your finger,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
pretty
Well,
annoying.
I do that, and I can see.
Well, what about when you want Taco Bell and it's midnight and nobody wants to go and you have to
Yep.
starve?
Yep.
Come on.
You don't get to just jump in your
Yeah,
car
you
and
can't
run to
just-
Taco Bell.
Yeah, you can't just jump in your car.
I did hear that Uber is now delivering food, so maybe you can
Oh.
call Uber
Oh.
and bring you food.
That would be very cool.
There's probably an
Yeah.
app for that. There's an app for everything
There's
now.
an app
Yeah.
for everything.
And anything
Yeah.
else that stands out? Because that's come up quite a
Um,
bit in other shows that we've had, is the lack of transportation issue of not being independent that way. The transportation thing,
The waiting
waiting.
is
And
the,
just being
the hard
patient.
part.
Yeah, trying to be patient all the time.
And sometimes we have to be patient with ourselves, and that can be annoying.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, I know I can do this. If I could just see it, it would be easy, but I can't, so I need to be patient with myself so I can do it.
Make it through.
Yep.
Okay.
You know.
So you have
Yep.
to be a little bit self-aware, I guess.
Yeah.
Of,
Well, and I think too, like the more independent you are, when you have to ask for help, and you almost feel like you're being annoying because of the way that you're asking. Because if you ask, a few times and your response isn't exactly what you're hoping for, and
Okay.
you have to continue to, be like, oh, remember you said you were going to do this for me.
okay.
That's very frustrating, I think, overall, because it's hard enough to ask for help, but when you have to ask like 3 times,
Okay.
yeah.
Or those people who want to do everything for you,
Oh, yeah.
and then they get sick of you, so then they're gone.
Then then they leave. They're like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
I would rather not have that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's very hard.
Well, I think people assume that you can't cook or clean, or you can't, like, oh, well, you can't do any of that. So, but you guys do all of that, right?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, we do.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Debbie
Actually,
doesn't do-
I'm lucky because my husband likes to cook, and we made a deal when we got married that
He would.
if he would cook, I would clean up.
Oh, that would
So,
be a good
but
deal.
I can cook. I actually taught him to fry chicken. So,
Okay.
Oh, see, and I can cook too, but Carson loves to cook. So now that she's big, I don't cook as much.
Okay.
No, she's mainly the one, that's for sure.
So, and then you were mentioning clothes and laundry. How do you do your laundry when you can't see? Because you're supposed to separate whites into darks and.
I use a color identifier.
Okay.
I used to try to remember what color things were, but sometimes I'll buy something in different colors and it's the same thing, like a shirt.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that can be, one could be red, and although I don't wear red, but for an example, one could be red and one could be white, and that could be disastrous. So,
Then you have a pink shirt.
yeah. So
Couple
then,
pink shirts.
yeah.
That is true.
So I started using a color identifier, and that makes it so much easier.
And that's just a little machine that,
You
that
put
reads the
the color.
dye, and it tells you what color it is.
Right.
Well, you're lucky
Yeah.
enough that you have one of those. I have
There's
never,
one on your phone.
Yeah.
They don't work as well as the handheld
as the
one.
handheld one.
But they're
it's-
expensive, and that's another thing
Yeah.
that's really annoying
It's
about
everything, yeah. It's
being,
all outrageous.
being visually impaired is the companies have a monopoly on whatever their product is, and so they can charge an outrageous amount for it.
Okay.
I think it's getting better with the technology, but this particular color identifier works 100% better than the several they have on the phone.
Yeah, the ones on the phone,
They're just so, and they come up with
Inaccurate,
these,
yeah.
they're inaccurate for one thing, and then they come up with these names of colors, and you have no clue what color that
Chartreuse.
is. well, I think most people know what that is, but
Yeah.
strawberry, or not even, well, that's not a good example because people know what color strawberries are, but just some off-the-wall
Yeah.
name.
Yeah.
You know,
and so,
and you-
Sarah, if you didn't have one of those, what did you do for your laundry?
I put it on cold, and I just throw it all in and cross my fingers.
Well, there you go. That's,
in all honesty.
so that's one thing we were also talking about on the break is problem solving, and a lot of people treat people who can't see as they're not quite as bright as the rest of the people,
Oh,
but in
yeah.
fact they actually have to be a little bit smarter and a little bit more on the ball and a little bit more organized, and in order to be able to function. So to treat them like they're not as intelligent is extra insulting.
That's another thing that's really annoying is you go to a restaurant and a
Oh, yeah.
waitress says to the person next to you, what would she like?
Oh,
And I just simply say, I would like, and then they don't know what to say.
yeah.
I can speak for
Yeah,
myself.
Yeah.
I don't say that, I just tell them I would like, and then they just go from there.
Hopefully they get it.
Hmm
Yeah.
Or they yell at you.
Oh,
You can't see, so why wouldn't they yell
so
at
you
you?
can not
So you
hear.
can hear them, right?
Interesting.
Or they walk, they're going to guide you somewhere, they walk so slow, you just want to push them, you know?
Actually, I do. I'll kind of nudge. I'll go, it's okay, we can kind of run a race.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So as you were saying earlier, or we were saying earlier, the most annoying thing about being blind is sighted people.
Yes.
See, Debbie was trying to be nice and not say that, but that's actually what we had decided.
Not meaning to be offensive, but.
So going back to that with your sighted children, have they tried to get away with things knowing that you can't see them?
Yes, yes. Putting things in the cart.
Oh,
When
in
we're
the
at the
grocery
store.
when they're little, yeah.
And I get up there and it's more than I expect. I'm thinking, wow, why is that so much?
And there's
Then I find out.
Cheetos in there or
Yeah.
something.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
I think all kids have tried that. That
Of
they just
course.
might have a better chance of getting away with it.
Yep.
With you guys, I
Yeah,
don't know.
because you don't know until it's paid for,
Yeah.
you know?
And what about Sarah? We're gonna tell on Carson.
Yeah, well, I think with her, like I said, we're kind of together most of the time, and I don't encourage her needing to fit. So it's always been like little things, like sneaking candy, like you hear the wrapper, when she was little.
Yeah.
Because I mean now she's big enough to know that you shouldn't eat like 12 candy bars.
Okay.
But before she wasn't. I think overall, it just like when she was little, like kind of like deciding like, oh, I want to try mommy's makeup on, and like normal kid stuff.
Right.
But nothing too,
Nothing too bad.
Nothing too bad. No.
Just normal kid stuff.
Yeah, just normal kid stuff, because I think overall we have like we have to trust each other with everything.
Yeah.
Basically. So.
That's a good point.
No, but she's almost sometimes like TMI. I'm like, I really just didn't even need to know all that. Like there's certain things you just keep to yourself.
There's some things that can be a secret. It's
yeah,
okay.
it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Well, that's good. So, what would you say or maybe like what are the main disadvantages or even advantages to being a parent who can't see? I mean, you're saying some of the disadvantages and annoyances, but there's probably advantages as well.
When your children make faces at you because you're telling them off,
You can.
or stick out their tongue, or flip you off, or whatever they may do.
Not that they would do that, but if they wanted to.
Yeah. You can't see them, so it doesn't affect you. And I always told my kids that. I said, you can make faces at me, stick out your tongue, whatever you want to do, but it's not going to change anything because I can't see you.
Don't you love it when you're like, I know you're rolling your eyes right now. I can feel it. But you know what? I don't care.
Yep.
Yeah.
So maybe things you don't engage or get as upset or as hostile because you can't see them and then take it to the next level of anger.
Right.
That's
Maybe.
true.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's
Yep.
true.
I think you're right, yeah.
That you can stay calmer maybe in some
Until they run their
situations.
mouth.
And I was gonna say, 'cause, Carson and I can, we can bicker. I'd say pretty well, like kind of like theatrically, But overall, I think that and the funny thing was she didn't realize when she kind of went out into the world and went to school, like, oh wait, all these other people can see me. And she would like get annoyed at something and like kind of scrunch up her nose and do one of those, and the teacher would be like,
interesting.
"Ooh,
She's like, I know you know I can see you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's
It's
like,
like,
oh
just 'cause your
no.
mom can't, And-
Interesting. That
Yeah.
would be funny, kind of, in a way. Sort of.
I think she still kind of does some of that. I don't know.
So I think
Yeah.
maybe having a sense of humor, has that been helpful? You both
Absolutely.
have a good sense of humor, so
Yeah, you have to have a sense of humor to be a parent, I think.
yeah.
And then especially being a visually impaired parent, if you don't have a sense of humor, you're going to be in trouble.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yep.
That's going to be a stressful, even more stressful situation. So as we start to wind down here, we have a few minutes left, but if there's someone out there who is thinking about becoming a parent or is a parent and facing low vision or blindness, whether that's a sudden thing or an ongoing thing or a future thing even, they've been told that that's going to be happening. What would your advice to them? Should they be parents? If so, what should they do to get ready for that as a low vision or blind person? What would you recommend for them to know?
Oh, that's a tough question. I would say if you really want it, do it.
Absolutely.
You're human, just like anyone else, and that's one of our
Things.
innate
Life
desires,
goal, yeah,
I
is
think,
to have children.
is to have
okay.
children for most people. So, do it, and then you just sort of make your accommodations along the way and become creative and,
Okay.
Make it work, absolutely.
So is there anything they can learn how to do to better prepare? Like you were saying you didn't know Braille, so with learning Braille or what?
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know. Labeling.
Learning ways to label. I mean, but there's so much great technology. That's the thing.
independent living skills.
Yeah,
I
and
think.
yeah, I would say overall independent living skills because I honestly didn't even have that. When
Yeah.
I had Carson, it was kind of like a, guessing game of how to do things.
Right.
But overall, yeah, independent living skills, definitely mobility.
Oh, yeah, you got to have mobility skills.
We had some fun times learning how to pull a stroller and use a cane
Okay.
versus pushing because it was easier to pull her behind me.
Interesting.
Some of those kind of things, and
Make it work.
we made it work. It just looked odd, but it worked.
So other than mobility issues and independent living skills, what kind of other resources would you recommend they tap into or find?
I know online there's a couple different Facebook groups. There's blind parents and supporters of blind parents.
Okay.
You do basic searches like that. I don't know. I think Hadley was going to start Hadley Institute for the Blind, which is a male correspondence classes, and I think they were offering some parenting classes as well.
And they do online courses
And
as well.
yeah, everything's online and by mail. And then there is somewhere in San Diego that has a parenting class that was started by one of the guys that's in one of the blind parent
Okay.
and supporters of blind parents groups on Facebook.
So
Because
maybe
he
it's
saw the
important
need.
for them to know that they're not the first person to do this.
No,
They're
no.
not on their own, that there are people who have advice and can help them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Debbie, do you have any suggestions? I know she mentioned learning about like technology is out there, but if you don't know how to use it as a non-sighted person, that's a different.
Go to the Valley Center for the Blind and learn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very
So
true.
in most cities, there are organizations, there's Lighthouse for the Blind in larger cities, and we have Valley Center for the Blind, and there's often people who contract with the Department of Rehabilitation, so get some of those.
Or ask peers. If you know someone else who's blind, just talk to them.
See if they'll,
See if they can help
Give
you.
you some
Give you
lessons?
some advice or, yeah.
okay. So anything else that you want to end our session with today that we haven't talked about? We have just a few more minutes.
I just want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to come on and
Thank you.
talk about, parenting in the dark or semi-dark for Debbie.
In the dark or in the shadows.
In the shadows, yeah.
Yeah, because I do think a lot of people have questions and they'd like to know, or like, how do you do your laundry, or what do you do when this happens, and they're afraid to ask. So I think it's great that you guys are willing to come on and be open and honest and share your experiences, because it would be helpful to some people.
And I think that most blind people are more than happy to answer questions rather than have you make assumptions.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just,
You have a question? Say, excuse me, can I ask you a question?
If you don't mind.
I mean,
Yeah, this may
If you
seem
don't
silly,
mind, yeah.
but and it's like nothing silly.
Nothing is, no
Well, that's
question is
good.
dumb.
Yeah.
there's no such thing as a dumb question.
Right,
No.
yep.
All right. So thank you, ladies, so much. You've been lovely. We've talked about a lot of things, and it's been a lot of fun. So I hope you've enjoyed your time here. I've certainly enjoyed my time here, just sitting around like chatting with the girls, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been fun. Yeah.
So, yeah. So as we leave today, I want to thank you so much for joining us again on Blindside Fresno. And as always, if you have any questions or want to contact us with thoughts or ideas, please email us at blindsidefresno. And that information is at the end of our program. And thank you for joining us for another episode. And have a great day. Thank you.